Here with me today is Shauna Cummins, who is a hypnosis artist and the author of Wishcraft, which is a particular kind of manifestation process that I feel we could all benefit from right now. Yeah, there she is. Hooray, hooray. We made it.
Sorry for the drama. I'm like just dramatic entrance.
There's always a bit of drama around the edges with me. I've quit trying to get rid of it personally.
I've leaned into it. I think it's
Yeah, lead into
every now and then.
drama. Come on.
It's a little fun. I'm a Leo, so just even
Oh,
though I've tried to, I've worked on it, it's still like, a
a
little
Cancer and
commotion
a
going
Leo, and we're talking about hypnosis and witchcraft. I mean, bring it on, right? Don't you think? Um,
Yes.
Darling, so are you Irish?
Yes. So my parents are Irish,
Your parents are.
and I went to school there for a bit, and I worked there, and I spent my summers there with my grandma and my family, and well, a lot of summers, and just really like growing up Irish American. You're just like always like more Irish than Irish people, because you're always talking about it and thinking about it and reading about it. So yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
it
I was
definitely
just reading your
influences.
book, Witchcraft, and it felt very kind of Celtic, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved, yeah, I love the magic of it. I mean, I have Scottish roots, so I grew up on fanciful stories, and we made wishes on special stones, and I suppose it's no accident I ended up in California around a bunch of people wishing on crystals. So yeah, right, here we are.
Oh my gosh, I totally get it. And it's interesting too, Scotland and California, like now that you put it that way, it's kind of like there's kind of there's a connection there I could see because it is so mystical, although totally different planets, like it's a weird connection, but I could see that. Yeah.
Different mystical planets. That about sums it all up to me. Yeah, they're my
What
two homelands, and sometimes I think they're crazy different. Like I feel like I'm like, you know, California Barbie meets Scottish witch.
right.
And
I love it.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. So let's just dive into this.
Yeah.
Does this work? Are we talking about being able to make our own dreams come true here? Should we just should we just get right in this?
I appreciate the straightforwardness of it. You know what? I think we do it all the time. I think it's something that we're doing unconsciously all the time. And so it's about understanding the power of our thoughts and our intentions and how to work with it consciously as a craft and an art. And you really start to wield it and collaborate with it because it's something that's already at work. Like just so that's the thing. So yes, it does work, but it's also a process and an art and a craft.
I like that you call it an art because yeah, I always think about sort of therapy in that way as well as a sort of as a healing art. These are less sciences and more arts. They're kind of creative responses to life, actually. That's how I see it. There was a quote in your book, Change Your Mind, Change Your World, that I felt like got to I think it's an anonymous quote, but it feels like it kind of gets to the essence of what
Yeah.
you're doing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I love that. I at first one of the first drafts I had like a lot of inspirational quotes from people that I admire and stuff. But then I think we were just going into this age where it was like, you know what? Just do your own thing and don't refer to anyone in the past because it can be so controversial. But that one I included because it's kind of like an old age adage in it. Everyone's kind of heard a version of that before. And I like change your mind, change your world because there's a certain intimacy that we can start to cultivate with our mind and ourself. Then all of a sudden it's like the Anais Nin quote. It's like the world is not as it is, it is as we are.
Mm.
So it's like understanding that our perception is part of our lifelong, you know, journey, like becoming intimate with that, learning the language of ourself, and our inner world, and
Mm.
how the mind works is it projects out what through our senses, what we're experiencing. And so once you start to really understand like language, the senses, the language of the mind through your senses, what you smell, what you see, what you feel, what you hear, then you can start to play with it like a painter would play with, like, a paintbrush, and like you can start to bring awareness to be like, oh, well, how did that sound affect me? And what am I feeling about it? So you can become very aware and mindful of like what's coming through your senses and how it's affecting your perception. And this is very much what the process of mindfulness is, the practice of mindfulness is. But when you bring it into the sort of wishcraft of it, or a manifestation practice, it becomes much more, yeah, artful and whimsical in this way.
Mm.
There's a big part of really tuning into your desire. you know so it's like what's happening in the world, but it's like you become more and more intimate with your desires in a conscious way, and then how you can get better and better at responding to the world around you. So it's all very relational, like it's your relationship to your desires, your relationship to the world around you. And so when you change inside, of course the way you perceive and receive the world changes. you know
Absolutely. It's kind of an ongoing realization for me that everything is relational.
yes,
It's
I love
wild.
this.
It's
I
wild.
know, it's wild.
It's wild because I don't know why it's wild. I mean, it's wild because we are trained to think in terms of separation. And even now, in terms of like, we're in a very, obviously very bifurcated kind of political landscape. And there's still a tendency to think, oh, that crazy world out there, instead of
Hmm.
taking kind of radical responsibility, for the projection. So if we made if we took radical responsibility, we could say, gosh, what a divided world.
Hmm.
Let me look at the divisions within myself and
Mm.
see what I can do. And we could start working in this homespun way. And I think, this is what led me to you, and has sort of led me to my own inner witch, is
Mhm.
seeing this world that is very, very kind of top down,
Mhm.
and thinking this is not the solution. And that it feels to me that now the human solution is more of a grassroots solution, that each of us must start sort of sowing the seeds of unity in our own lives, as opposed to being these reactive creatures to the division that we've already created as a species,
Yeah.
already created. So
Yes.
that's kind of interesting, right? So what if we had the seeds of wholeness in us and we started to, create from there?
Yeah. No,
That's
it's
it.
fascinating. It's because the way you say, like, the world right now as it is running top down, it reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with that the triangle that represents the neurological levels of change. It
No.
comes from Gregory Bateson, which is like the neurological levels of learning, and then later was adapted to neurolinguistic programming for the neurological levels of change. So understanding that change happens in a non-linear way, from the top down and the bottom up, and from the middle all the way around. But it's really great to have these levels to refer to. So the first level, we're talking about the bottom up, is the environment. So like so that's what you're saying, like bringing back to like what's going on around me, what can I do in my community, what can I do in my home, what can I do today. And then the second level is your behavior, and then how you can take action there. And then the third level is your beliefs. So what are you believing about this, about that, like getting really intimate, and in having an inquiry about what's going on, what you're feeling. And then your identity comes up. And that's the thing, right now we're very much in identity and purpose. So identity is the next level from the top, and then after that it's like purpose or source. But right now, I feel like a lot of people get stuck in identity, which is not spiritual. Actually, it's religion, it's politics.
Mm.
And they confuse the source with the identity. And like that's a really easy way to divide people and influence people. And like that's what's happening now. So it's like interesting.
It's such an interesting thing to look at identity in terms of sort of manifestation, because I think that, it's very easy for us to believe the stories we've been told about ourselves, or we've told ourselves about ourselves, in terms of like, oh, I'm someone who could never do that, or I could never. Let's talk about relationships. Like, oh, I haven't seen happy relationships around me, so why could I be the one to then create a happy relationship?
Yes.
Have you seen?
Yeah.
I think we should talk about like how you work with people and the kind of problems that you're seeing, or the kind of problems that you're solving. But I'm very curious about that. These kind of like self-limiting beliefs and how we can get past them.
Yeah, it's so important. And and it's approaching it with a sense of like compassion and collaboration, I think is key. It's definitely been key for me in my work, and the work that I do with my clients. Because for example, a classic example in hypnosis is like hypnosis works really well for people who want to, stop smoking. And one of the reasons why, addictive behavior like, smoking is difficult is because they are reinforcing constantly, I am a smoker. Oh, are you a smoker? You're not a smoker. Like how many, like forms do you fill out? Or, when there was smoking section, oh, the smokers over there, or like so who they are, and they're affirming that with their language, with their belief, with their identity all the time. And so it becomes hard to separate that, even if they've done it in the environment, in the behavior, in the beliefs. So like really working with, your word as your wand, like that Florence Shin quote.
What's the quote?
It's really important.
Who said it?
Your word is your wand. I believe it's that I'm paraphrasing it. But yeah, so like understanding the power of words, that you can wield it and you can kind of start to have it be something that's supportive, and
So that would be
guiding
like,
you.
I'm creating a past within which I was a smoker.
So instead of being open to the fact that yes, I smoked in the past, and I'm open and receptive to becoming a non-smoker now, so you kind of want to
Yeah,
make it active and present
yeah.
and believable, but also starting to question like, oh, are you a smoker? Were you born a smoker? Like,
Mm,
yes, even if you smoked most majority of your life, there's
yeah.
still so much of your life, unknown, and as a non-smoker, and that you live into that, and you speak into it, and you
Mm,
focus on it, because it's really about how you can work with your mind to make it work for you instead of against you. Because the mind
mm.
is really, it's really a tool, and it's a focusing lens and tool, so if you start it is like, if you're going to focus on something and repeat it, it's going to attract more of it. That's a very popular thing, like attracts like, or what you focus on you attract, but it's even more mechanical and simple than that, and like in a sort of behavioral way. It's part of what your brain is just doing what it's told, and unconsciously, if you keep on repeating something, you're going to find more of it because you're looking for it. Like if you're obsessed with a car and you want to buy that car, you see the car everywhere. If you're obsessed with, and you have a crush and you see the name everywhere and signs all over the place, you're looking for it because you're feeling it, you're thinking it. Your desire is sort of like a focusing lens, you know.
Absolutely. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, this thing about like toxic relationships that, is kind of quite a buzzword right now. So yeah, I could go around saying to myself or other people, oh, I just keep falling into toxic relationships. Or I keep finding myself attracted to toxic males. Let's take that one. So
Mhm.
if I had that story about myself, I keep finding myself attracted to toxic males. I suppose not only would I be telling myself that story, which would be easier to keep going, but also every time I met a male who I found attractive, I would probably be scanning for his toxic, which isn't a very nice way to go on a
Exactly.
date or meet someone. So how would
Exactly.
I reframe that? Let's just say that was something I was dealing with, because I bet there's a few people listening who might relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to befriend yourself in this process,
Hmm.
because
What does that
it's
mean? Befriend yourself, like.
So meaning like encourage yourself to do these exercises where you're going to
Uh,
start to think about other things,
yeah.
because the default mode is going to be, your pain point. You're
Mm,
like you've been hurt, you have had these toxic relationships, or have relationships with these toxic men, and you're not denying that.
yeah.
It's validated, but there's a lot of other possibilities, and you're open and receptive to focusing on those now. And one way to do that is to start to make lists. It's very practical. Like, you make a list. Your mind, when you make the list, follows your instruction, especially if you write it down. And the scientific, you know um, mechanism, it is called the reticular activating system in the brain. So you can see that the brain is just like doing its job. Whatever you're writing down and focusing on, it's going to start to pay attention to it. So writing down like a list of 5, males in your life or in the world, or who have ever lived, that you admire their qualities. You admire how they are, how they respect women, how they expect their partners, how they are in relationships. And you might have to investigate, the inverse, with the toxicity in the past relationships, and what you didn't like about it, and what didn't work for you, and how you maybe were attracted to certain things that
Would
you're
you be
not.
writing that too, or are you only writing the new manifestation?
So the new manifestation, you're going to not only write it, but you're going to think about it, you're going to repeat it, you're going to have mental and emotional images
Okay.
in your mind that you're going
Yeah.
to anchor into. So it's okay to write the list about the old stuff, because you're already like, feeling like that comes right up to the surface. So
Right,
you don't,
right.
so it's not like, so it's not, you're not like going to reinforce it more if you write it that way. It's
Right. It's more
just that
like
you're going
you're
to,
releasing. I'm releasing
you're
these
releasing.
toxic scenarios that I've been finding myself in with a view to something new. And
Exactly.
then I'm calling in healthy male energy along the lines of, Barack Obama, or like,
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And
right?
and affirming that. So
Yeah.
like, repeating and affirming. And so the reason why you want to identify, the toxic patterns, and kind of like investigate it, get curious about it, is because you also want to interrupt the pattern when it comes up.
Uh,
So you can see it, and then you can reroute it. So you're gonna, reframe it to the healthy, supportive possibility, and know that that's a reality, and start to begin to train yourself like an athlete trains themselves to be in the shape and the form of their mentor, of a superstar athlete. So you think about someone who's really great at relationships, that really has secure, healthy relationships. What are they attracted to? What do they look for? How did how did that happen? And you start to get curious about how they do that, and then you affirm it. You see it in the world. You start to open up to it, and you start to get, attracted to it, excited about it. You start to celebrate it, you know?
Yeah, I like this exercise quality, and sort of like this firming up of these new neural pathways that might initially be very sort of frail or tenuous. And I think it's very interesting you use this word wish, which I grew up with to think was a weak word. Like,
Yeah.
I wish, like, oh, I could never have, or want is strong, but wish is like never, never. And what I think is really interesting about using that word, and I want to hear what your intention was, but for me, when you combine wish and craft, I'm like, oh, you can take that, really, that strand of longing that may have, and maybe this is me bringing my own story to it, may have in the past had "you can't have this" wrapped around it. Like,
Mhm.
oh, a beautiful, healthy, true relationship. Oh, long lost dream, because I never saw it growing up, and say, actually, that isn't a lost dream. It's a dream that hasn't had enough reinforcement. And how about we add some attention to this, and grow the muscles of this wish so that it can become a possibility. So I think it's very cool, and it's what I've been attracted to. And I mean, this is what the sort of psychic section of this podcast has been about, really, is my journey in realizing that there's something so beautiful about tapping into possibility,
Mhm.
so creative, and the
I
imagine
love that.
the imagine
It
oh, you
and
said it, the medicine of the imagination.
Yes, yeah, you're so good. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
You're totally, you have all the good talking points from the book. I really appreciate it. So yes, exactly. It is a reclamation. It's sort of like a sacred, divine, feminine, so to speak, reclamation of energies. Like for example, wish, and even now, some people are like, I'll talk to some of my they just happen to be male colleagues and stuff, and they'll be like, oh, a silly, wish making activity or something like that, and be like, and you could feel like they feel a little bit like it's weak or something like that. When in fact, it was very intentional because I'm referring to its sort of ancient etymology that is referring to a sacred longing and surrender of like the power of the human imagination, but also the power of letting go, which is very vital and integral part of any manifestation practice. And so the want is quite kind of patriarchal or like in this way, this kind of like owning this sort of like, I'm going to have it, it's going to be mine, so the wish, coming from the word desire, it's really like referring to desire, and desire in ancient Latin meaning desidere, or what the stars may bring, really referring to the power of this very human, instinct that we've had to wish on stars and dandelions and, ladybugs and,
Mm.
all kinds of wishing wells to, hope for, the practice of hope, to imagine more for ourselves and to get better and better at wishing well for ourselves no matter what, and then to let it go, to give it up to the universe and to collaborate with it, But it first and foremost, it's a practice of wishing well for yourself no matter what, allowing and deserving of wishing for yourself and being like, yeah, well, who knows? Maybe it's possible. And then let me work with it as a craft, becoming an artist of my own life and and see measurable results, but also know that I'm collaborating and co-creating with the universe, and perhaps something's going to happen that's even greater than I could have imagined, and so I don't have to hold so tightly to it as much as like really cultivate this sort of loving supportive relationship with yourself in the process, and
Mm.
not be afraid. It's because also, I mean, hope is a muscle, like and like that's important to practice that and not let it go just because, you know, hard things have happened or disappointment has happened. It's like how to open that up. And I know it's easier said than done, but it really is a deep, powerful healing practice when you bring it into that place of sacred healing.
Let's talk about disappointment. It's such a big one, really, isn't it, in this? So let's say, I have a wish for this podcast. And let's say my wish is I hit a certain number of followers or, listeners by the end of this year, and I fail miserably. And I've been doing all of my writing and my manifesting and, all of the things, and it just doesn't happen. What would your counsel be around that?
It would be, really tuning into what has happened, how it has benefited you, what you are proud of yourself for, and what can you do now, to move
Mm.
forward positively, and also, look at things creatively, because very often, we can be looking for like the gold, you know in this direction, but it's right in our backyard too. um
Yeah, I do know. I was just talking to a client actually who's a very overtly successful person, but their work has changed and that success is being threatened. And meanwhile, again, in the backyard is a what I would say tremendously successful picture of family, but was kind of typically put on the sort of the back burner in terms of identity. Like my identity is wrapped up with my success, but
mhm.
this great family I happen to have created is just like this bonus thing. And yeah, talking to him, I saw that, that opportunity for that reframe and to be able to draw from the strength of what is working in the picture and
Yeah.
then infuse what you want to work with that strength. So it's sort of um, this funny kind of balancing act, I suppose. And I like that you say, what is working? And because that is where the strength is. And I think this is an issue in mental health, is that we're often, focusing so much on the bit that is broken that
Mhm.
we are using our creative energy trying to figure that out. Meanwhile, like you said, life is going on. There are all these
Mhm.
cars driving around, not bumping into each other, birds flying around with two whole wings. Yeah.
No, it's so true because there's so much going on. There's so much information coming in at any given point,
Yeah.
but we are sort of like curators of our perception because based on our mood, based on our experience, based on our filters. So it's really amazing to open up and like kind of use this kind of sober psychedelic tool that we have to just start to look at things differently, listen deeply, walk another way home, like look up at the sky, like
Mm,
talk to somebody
mhm,
you've never talked to before, and then just start to see how things
mm.
change.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, talking of sober psychedelia, I mean, consciousness is a trip, right? Being a conscious being. And we have been hemorrhaging our ever evolving consciousness on externals, on this captivating world of content that we've created. And I'm very interested in what's happening now because I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I don't know how many, but certainly people within my bubble seem to be switching off the news, something I actually personally done a while ago. But, but a lot of people are switching off the news. And a lot of people are saying, actually, I don't want to spend this amount of time on Instagram. And a lot of people are actually realizing that they are hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
And to turn our attention away from wherever we're kind of wasting it, then we have this really interesting sort of like dividend. We have this interesting return. We have this interesting sort of extra amount of really our most precious resource, which is our attention. And wherever we put that, it grows, right? We will grow whatever
Mhm.
we look at. And that is crazy. And I think sometimes why we are not as creative as we could be is because it's actually quite scary taking that level of responsibility.
Yes, I mean scary, but also it's a habit forming
Mm,
modification. It takes a little work, takes commitment and dedication, and it takes conscious kind of like
yeah.
thought and effort, and you have to kind of go against the grain and really make it happen. But there's a lot of people who are very skilled and adept at helping you do that, and there's a lot of apps and resources that are like popping up now, ironically, to help
Mm.
people do that more and more, and I'm sure there will be as we go, but like we can definitely change, but it does take work, and we usually do what everyone else does. So we really have to kind of interrupt that pattern and
Right,
change it, you
exactly.
know?
It is the path of least resistance to just do what everyone else does. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you've applied wishcraft in your own life, or if you would rather just do, close clients, that's fine too. But I'd love to get into some sort of living examples with you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many, like it happens all the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I for the a big one for me was really like halfway in my career as a hypnotist, coming up with wishcraft. It kind of like even the moniker like coming into its own sort of elevated my life and took me on another path in a way that remembered my childlike whimsy of like healing and wishing and imagination, and really brought it into a sort of craft of hypnosis. And so at the halfway through my career, I was getting out of a very bad breakup, a relationship, and it was, I mean, I had CPTSD, I had ruminating thoughts, I was a wreck. I had alopecia. I woke up one day and I had like a complete bald spot on the top of my head just out of nowhere, and it was really from this traumatic event and stress from the relationship. And it was just, yeah, I was like, gosh. And I was doing so great as in my practice as a hypnotist, and I loved it so much. But yet there was this other part of my life that was really out of alignment. So I was like, what am I going to do? You know, and I keep looking up online, like, what can I do for alopecia? But, you know, there's not much you can do. But then I kept finding, oh, hypnosis can work. And I was like, oh, shoot. I was like, okay, I really gotta do that. But you know, at that time, I wasn't sleeping, all this stuff, and I was like, you know what, I have to just go for it and like have some fun and like do all the things I want to do because I'm desperate in the situation and this, you know, it's gonna suck anyway right now. And so I did feel at this point after helping all these other people, which I loved doing. I loved helping people. I loved being there in that sacred space and listening and you know holding that space for people. It was just it is such a fulfilling privilege. But I really, you know, feel like, you know, I'm an artist and I identify as an artist in my soul, like a poet artist, you know. And I was like, I really need to do it. I need to do something with this in a way that feels, you know, artistic and expressing it to the world in different ways. And so I had visions and desires to bring it to museums and galleries and music festivals and present it in a way where people had a lot of, you know, like a different perspective on it and like had reverence for it. And so I had insomnia and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, you know, call it the Wishcraft and this kind of, so it's going to be like ceremonial. And then I'm going to bring like sound healing and music and all this stuff into it. And I'm going to apply for art grants for music. Actually, the first one I did was at the Center for Contemporary Art in Glasgow. So it
Mm.
took me to Scotland, which was like this incredible, magical time and journey. And it was a sound art festival. I had a friend who was getting a master's there, was involved in this festival. And so I got accepted there. And there was always incredible, like, you know, academic sound artists and musicians and composers in this festival. And then they accepted my project, which was incredible. And it was like such a gift because I could, you know, I could compose, like basically curate this very like high brow artistic experience with hypnosis and imagination and sound in a way that it could be at a healing center, just like, you know, very like a sound bath or like a
Mm.
visualization journey. And it would be like, just like similar to all the other things, which are beautiful and amazing, but taking it out of that context and doing this other
Did
thing. And
you
it,
did you use your voice?
yes, so it's all about the
Yeah, you have
voice.
a beautiful voice. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so that was the first one that really leveraged me. And that was about really reclaiming my kind of imagination as a kid, where I was kind of obsessively wishing and kind of helping myself heal through autoimmune conditions and kind of getting lost in my imagination. And so when I was at, you know, at that stage in my mid 30s, trying to heal from this breakup and alopecia, I was like, okay, this is what it is. I've been doing this since I was a kid. And obviously now I'm a professional, you know, hypnotist, and I know how it works as a craft, but it's also something that is part of just needing to survive and pick yourself up when you're like curled up on the floor and you have to find your deep desire to keep going and not give up and wish well for yourself and wish more for yourself, you know, and just put yourself out there even if you're scared, like even if you're, you know, ruminating thoughts about all the bad things, just, you know, putting yourself out there and giving yourself that break and just not be so hard on yourself, you know? And like, so that opened up to all these other amazing, cool opportunities and led to the book and the school and traveling and all this amazing stuff. So that's kind of like a long, short example of the wishcraft, but it's pretty vital because I use it in everyday ways in like my wishing ceremonies and in my self hypnosis, like practices where I do the list of like, what are the positives? What can I appreciate about myself? How can I see this differently? And I really affirm the new pathways of like what I'm
Mm.
looking for.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that really does retrain my brain, you know, and it's, and through this practice, I've retrained my brain from chronic shame that I think was also cultural from this extreme, you know, Irish Catholic background that, you know, has a reputation for that, you know. And so I was able to also work with that and transmute it, like alchemize it, you know, and into a self-appreciation, you know, and you know, have a sort of compassion for myself when it does come up, you know. Um, but
Mm.
yeah.
I love that. It feels, I mean, on some level, we're talking about resilience, which I think is such an important thing as a human. And this kind of practice of adding, it's sort of like when you're getting a no from life in whatever form, right? The difficult relationship or some horrible stress related disease, some sort of chronic situation. What the imagination can do is bridge from that to, it's sort of like, what would actually, it sort of forces you to dream bigger in a way. It's like, what would be so good that it would cheer me up about this situation?
Exactly,
You know,
exactly. So I have to like toggle it to the opposite, where I was just
you
like,
toggle it,
this
you
is
toggle
so
it to
bad.
the
So I'm just gonna
opposite.
throw all the balls up in the air and just kind of go for it, because whatever, what do I have to lose?
I think
You
it's
know?
like the sort of it's the positive power of evil or something. As sort of, this is a mild example, but I've been thinking about it a lot recently because I've been kind of, I say going back into events. I was never really in events. I was in entertainment, but I grew up in the kind of the culture of parties in the sense that to my mum, and we didn't think about this, it was just a culture of our family, but it was the answer to the grey days in Scotland. It was the answer to the rainy
Mm.
days in England. Was like, oh, we feel miserable, we feel depressed, there's no light in the sky. Where are we going to get the light from? Oh, we'll throw a party. We'll throw a party. We just grab it out of the void. We'll just grab a party out of the void. And I thought nothing of it, and I even went through a phase of thinking, well, that's just so basic. But now, you go through these long journeys, right? And you sort of come back home at the end of the day and really appreciate some of the things you grew up with. And I'm just like, gosh, I love that raw creativity. And I'm kind of
Oh
back
yeah.
there now. I'm like, wow, what a shit show. Let's throw a party.
Yes, I love that. Oh my God, I'm right there with you. I grew up the same way too. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicago, but my parents had that same thing. It was just like, you know what? Doesn't matter what struggles we're having right now, we're putting it on the shelf. It's Friday night and we're having a party. Like we have
So,
no worries. And I'm like, and I had kind of mixed feelings about it until I got older. I was like, that is amazing. Like my mom passed a couple of years ago, and that was one of the things that I was just like, wow, what an inheritance. And I had such an appreciation for it in hindsight, because I know that wasn't easy, and but yet she really gave us that incredible gift of like being able to bring people together and stop time and just celebrate life no matter what was going on.
absolutely, and that is the divine feminine. And you think about that, it can express itself through the party, or it can express itself through the making of meals in wartime, which again is in some way
Yeah.
it's saying, even despite this hell, this horror, we're going to come together and be together and on some level celebrate.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
We're going
I
to
know
display
it's
wholeness.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that really is at the core of my work, even though with Wishcraft it presents as whimsical, and it is. There's a part whimsy,
Yeah.
part practical, kind of practice in it. But really with hypnosis, why it's not meditation is it's change work, is that you're going into that kind of trance state, really anchoring into your intention, to your desire, whatever that may be, whether it be something, really big for your life, or a habit that you want to change, or a heartbreak that you're healing from. So tuning into that desire and really like, working with the deeper layers of the shadow and the light, you know? So like it's holding the both things at once. It's not ignoring something. It's like learning how to collaborate with it and be in relationship with all of it, and start to learn that you can, just like there's healthy soil, like you can start to make the soil healthy, and then you bring it somewhere else, and then that makes that soil healthy. So that's what you're doing. You're really like, I think about the brain like a mycelium network, like, and the neural pathways are, it's so amazing how resilient and adaptable they are, and how you can influence them, and they can change. You can create new pathways and reinforce them, even though you still might have those trauma memories
Mm.
and the worries and the anxieties, but you can create the positive ones, and you can have them all sort of start to work together.
What I'm thinking of as you're talking, this is definitely a personal one, is sleep.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's something you work with, but
Yeah.
I would say my worst relationship in my life is sleep. And I have what my boyfriend calls performance anxiety around sleep. I
Yeah.
sort of I have it lodged in my head that I'm a bad sleeper and I can't sleep.
Right. So that's the thing.
And
You have to work on all those levels. Yeah.
yeah, so what would that like? What are those levels? How do I get that soil to improve?
Yes. No, I mean, I love working with this. I've worked with a lot of people with sleep over
Yeah.
the years. I have a hypnosis audio for sleep. I'll send it to you
Oh, I'd
after the
love that.
call.
Thank you so much. That'd be great.
Um, you know, it I like to like in the witchcraft, I kind of break down a little bit of, my methodology in the 5 pillars of witchcraft, so the
Mm.
5 C's. So the first one to start with is the first C, like self collaboration. So
Mm.
really starting to it breaks down to being looking for what you can appreciate about yourself, your life, sleep, like, and then getting intimate with yourself. Like, where am I, resistant here? Where am I feeling doubtful? Where am I feeling fear? So, and just really affirming sleep as a positive good thing. And like the ways when you did sleep, or how other people sleep, again, like looking for
Mm.
the positive, and then starting to really have the second C, really having compassion for yourself that feels nervous, that feels doubtful, that part of you can start to, like in internal family systems,
Mm.
therapy, where you start to like think about a different part. In hypnosis we work with that too, a little bit more creatively, so you can think about that voice, that part of you that gets really scared around sleep. Like, who is that? If it were a character or cartoon, give them a name, so you can start to be in relationship with that. But it's only one part, you
Mm.
know, and then bring it into, the sleep ritual, and you know, a lot, seeing when it's good and then making that better, seeing where you need more support and how we can kind of, heal and support you there, So it's a little bit of an investigative process, but it's
Mm.
getting really curious with it and compassionate and supportive of yourself, because it's a very natural thing, and there are tricks that can come in the night that can help kind of shut down your mind and the thinking mind. So that's something too, because it's a creative process. It's not something that you're going to solve through the logical mind. It's like a little kid having a tantrum. You can't be like, "Hey, that doesn't make any sense." You got to be like, "Oh, let's distract you." And all of a sudden,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
over here and you forgot about it. So it's like that. It's a part of the survival brain that it clicks on. So we can't go into the cage match with the survival brain. We have to kind of go where it's good, and then soften and turn down that survival brain,
yeah. It's funny. I got like an intimation of that yesterday. I was talking to my 14-year-old daughter, and she said, "I just turned my mind into a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper." I was like, "Whoa, that's cool.
Wow.
That's next level. I'm gonna try that."
That is next level. I'm inspired by that. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
afraid my pages have too many words on them at the moment. It's all meditation.
Yeah. That
Uh,
that seems very calming. Yeah.
yeah, it does. It does. Gosh, is there anything else you'd like to share that, that we haven't spoken about that's important to know about manifestation, witchcraft, or anything like that?
I mean, right now I'm particularly focused on helping people in relationships create rituals
Mm.
together. So the book I'm writing now is for applying this to relationships
Oh,
and how
beautiful.
to manifest in relationships. And I'm in a partnership now that I feel like, you know, really over the moon and grateful for it. It's something I had been wishing for a long time. And we share the practice of, self hypnosis and wishing rituals, and kind of make it part of our check-in, part of our fun, part of our connection. And like it's a
Oh,
really beautiful way to like you kind of bring in like your own little, you know, it's like a little bit of self therapy, but it's also a little bit of like mind tantra as well.
so wait, you're doing this around your relationship, or you're just sharing it with each other? You're sharing your hopes and dreams with each other in a ritualized way, or are you sharing, you're manifesting the relationship together, or both?
I mean, we're doing it together as a practice, and we have from the start. So like, for example, like new moon or full moon or like special holidays, we'll have like a little wishing ceremony, where part of like the exercises in my books that I share, but like applied to, relationships or the other person, like what I love about myself, what I appreciate about myself, what's hard for me right now, what I appreciate about him, what I love about him right now, what has been hard for me with him right now, what we want, what I want, what he wants, that kind of thing. Like there's all different
Mm,
ways to
mm.
to work with it that I have, and also just simple, or like, and then like for example, at the New Year we did one that was really beautiful where we wrote wishes for each other. So every month we would have a wish that I would have, that he would make come true for me, and I would make come true for him. And so we have those things to like unpack and look forward to, um,
Oh, I love
and
that.
love that.
I love the sharing of wishes, what I wish for you. And actually it can be a good thing to do with strangers too. I did that once at a ceremony, where it was a women's ceremony. They didn't all know each other, but we would write a kind of like a general, like what would be our highest wish for another person that we loved. And then, you put them, actually I hung them up on this tree that I had, and then,
Yeah.
everyone picked one at the end. Um, Yes, well, how beautiful. What a beautiful way to work with desire, to braid desire and kindness.
Yeah, and also, vulnerability,
Mm.
so like, really being vulnerable, with what you desire, but also what's been hard, or, what you need, and like, and also respecting the other person's needs and desires, and sensitivities, and also, you know, just having it be something that you can, do on a regular basis as life goes on, you know?
Yeah, I can see it's a good relationship maintenance, what you're talking about. So if you do it every full moon and every new moon, a ritual.
Once a month now, but like,
Okay.
for like, I think, doing it in cycles is really good,
Mm.
like doing it in a cycle of like 6 months, for example, and then another cycle of, then it's a building cycle, you're in the creative processes, so you don't do that until the holidays. But there's, not that it becomes rote or becomes habit, but like doing it for a certain period of time, I think is really important or beautiful, because you can dive deep, you can really get to know each other better, you can really start to, manifest together. But
Mm.
then there's it's great, it's like therapy, it's like a good time to like, okay, now it's time to go out and do it and live your life and do the thing and be in the relationship and make the magic happen. So that's part of it too, it's not like, oh my god, we have to do our wishing, it's like, no, it happens like very much in alignment, and then the living happens. So that I really love, and just like, learning how to heal together, because I feel like it's so beautiful when you get to that place where you're like, manifesting or wishcrafting, the relationship that you've always wanted, that maybe is, more secure, but also very, desirous and loving and all the things. But then, your shadow comes up, your trauma comes up, you know, and that's the place where you can really do the deeper healing, and regulating of your nervous system and evolving of your patterning. You can only do so much on your own, like, and it
Yeah,
doesn't even necessarily have to be in romantic relationships, but just intimate relationships in general. It's like that's the real work. It's not this perfect little, like, you go to a workshop and it's done. It's like you have to, it's messy, and you have to be there, like, in the activation and moving through it with new ways of speaking about yourself, with new ways of believing in yourself, with new ways of, wishing well for yourself.
I completely agree with that. And I feel like I'm your mirror in this situation in terms of, I got to the stage where I couldn't, I'd sort of done as much inner work as I could do without being in close partnership with someone else. And now I'm in that stage of, being deep in it, in the intimacy and all of the shadow work and the joy that comes with being able to be with someone in vulnerability and be with someone in the shadow, not be alone in the shadow, but be with someone in the shadow who's also has their
Yeah,
own shadows that you can also be with. And it's an amazing healing process. I think it is the healing power of relationship, and it's not going to heal you if it's not difficult. I don't think it's, I mean, it's part of
exactly.
the package, which is
Exactly.
wild.
Yeah,
Not what we
exactly.
were told in those
Yeah.
stories back in the day.
No, they left that part out,
They
but,
left that part out because I guess nobody knew it. But
um
yes, here we are in that part, and it's wonderful to be in that part. It's a blessing.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yes. So
But
thank you so much. It was so nice. I
uh,
love chatting with you so much. You're
I
so
love chatting with
gracious.
you too. It's beautiful to meet you. And let's end with a wish for yourself and for the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Well, I am wishing for a very supportive, abundant relationship with finances and money, so to speak, in this world. Like, yeah, so that's what I'm wishing for right now.
I
And
wish
for
that
the
for
world,
you, Shauna. I wish that for you.
thank you. Thank you
Abundance.
so much.
And
And
so
then
it is.
for the world, I'm really wishing for, you know, a greater sense of kindness and um compassion and um presence with each other, and especially like our neighbors and people different than one another, ourselves. So like a really like a much more neighborly approach to being in the world and helping each other out.
I join you in that wish too. Beautiful. And where can we find you should you want to be found?
Thank you. I do want to be found. um
Good.
so yeah, so Instagram at the Wishcraft
Mhm.
is good. And then my website, shaunacummins.com. And you can email me there. That's the book. Thank you. And
Showing
that's
the
the
book
book. The
here.
book you
With
can buy
it's like
anywhere.
it's a dandelion broken down into a graphic design, this book that I'm holding up by the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
So beautiful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.